Hey yo, what is up everyone? It is the Alpha J of the Alpha J Show, and today we will answer the question, did Unikitty start off well? It has 9 episodes out at the time of recording and making of this video, so out of all the ones I watch, I believe Action Forest will help answer said question. Today's shout out is going to be T-Blocks. It is a monthly subscription service that sends awesome merchandise that is customized to your interests. Whatever you pick is exactly what you get in the mail each month. They send amazing t-shirts that are either made in-house or made by external artists, which I think is pretty cool because they openly look out for new talent. And a great way to help out the channel and also get something cool back is to use the code ALPHAJYTBX, all one word, on the screen for 10% off your first month. And the best part is that if you don't like the shirt, you can actually exchange it. They're very clear about that. But let's get into this. From an outsider's perspective, I would not blame others if they thought Unikitty wasn't a show for them when you compare it to the other shows on the network. Unikitty seems at first like a show for a younger demographic, possibly a demographic that My Little Pony has. And in some aspects, you would be correct. Unikitty isn't exactly a show that lends itself to being boxed in its perceived category. I can imagine teens or people my age, regardless of gender, talking about Unikitty in the same way that one would talk about the Powerpuff Girls. It just seems like a show that's more than a cute rainbow kitty show, and they prove just that with this episode here, Action Forest. The episode starts off with Unikitty and friends preparing a picnic. Their friend slash bodyguard Hawkodile comes crashing down, literally, taking out threats in a very comedic way. I like how, because of where the story goes, they portray him as being at the top of his game, although they play it over the top because Unikitty is a very over the top show. I can imagine that in this show, in this series, that injury doesn't matter that much. Contrast this show with something like Welcome to the Wayne or Clarence, where if a character gets hurt, it usually isn't treated lightly.
Alright, tea party secure.
Whoa, dude! That was so cool! And so brave!
And so unnecessary.
I can tell I'm going to like Richard a lot. Also, I can see a lot of classic Fairly OddParents and OKKO in this show. It has this sense of not taking itself too seriously, which is obvious, but it also has this undertone of being weird and taking that risk of needing someone to digest a lot of episodes to get the weird stuff that happens within the show. A lot of people use this to describe Adventure Time at one point actually, but I got into this show a lot easier than that show, although I'm probably the minority. So Hawkodile gets Eagle punched into a hill, where he meets his former friend and longtime rival, Eagleator.
We meet again, bro.
I'm not your bro.
Then we meet again, friend.
I'm not your friend.
Then we meet again, amigo.
That's Spanish for friend.
OKKO goes this route a lot with Lord Boxman and the Sort. It obviously is going to be a serious battle, but they never play it up to be of importance until it actually is. And just like with that show, I like it. However, I do have something to say about that, and I will get to that later. The fight scene is very wacky, colorful, and poppy, as the show doesn't try to emphasize the violence, although it does show it. Also, love the shaky cam. You can see with the quirky graphics that they use to emphasize, the quick cuts they use, and the sound effects that go along with the attacks. It gives a vibe of not being like a Looney Tunes cartoony vibe, but more like a Tom and Jerry vibe that's been ran through a cupcake filter with extra sugar, that sort of cartoony vibe, and I do appreciate it. What interests me the most is that when Hawkodile loses a fight over who should receive said shades, more on that later, they don't show Hawkodile's eyes, so this can be a Double D's hat slash Louise's hat slash insert character that never slash rarely shows a part of them scenario, which leads to tons of speculation and is an easy way to create questions for your fans without giving too much away. And I like that. It has led me personally to question what he can be hiding. Is it very cute or feminine like eyes? Is it a giant scar? Or maybe it's nothing at all, and he really does have a problem with adjusting to the sunlight. But let's see exactly why these shades were of importance though.
We were equals in skill and action hero coolness. Our training was complete, and the best action heroes would be awarded a hero's highest honor, cool sunglasses. Only one of us was to receive sunglasses that day, and our sensei gave them to me.
Those shades should be mine! I should be wearing those shades, bro. In a while, Hawkodile.
Now, when it comes to villains, this is great and almost perfect way to set them up, and I do have a bit to say, so sit back. Number one, this show didn't have to do this. It is a show aimed towards a younger audience, and I'm sure the network doesn't care either way. I know us, our community, we would give kids the benefit of the doubt that they could understand undertones and complex issues without everything essentially being LOL random. But of course, we actually look at cartoons one way. I wouldn't blame those who think that I, or any other YouTuber who makes video topics on stuff like this, for essentially thinking that we don't understand. But I do want to point out, besides your action show, a lot of shows I've seen, they don't set up villains any further than their flaws, or what they did to the protagonist. And it segues into my next point. This is exactly what I pointed out in the Cleveland show review. I can understand the intentions of the antagonist, and it's very simple to explain. He wants the shades because he thought he deserved them before. It's not complex, it's not long, plus unlike the Cleveland show, this is 11 minutes. So for that specific episode of the Cleveland show that I was talking about, you can see why I facepalm at the fact that a show about a Lego brick can make me feel more emotions than a show about a family being portrayed in the modern age and a slice of life. And that Lego brick didn't need me to step on it barefoot in the middle of the night. Also, they both appear to be kids, and as a kid, it would be somewhat justified throwing a tantrum and growing up to be bitter if he was essentially rejected after working very hard. Plus, this is a spoof of martial arts movies that have taken this plot and even stories earlier than that. I can see that they interwove references into here. In fact, this reminds me of the story in The Fury from The Amazing World of Gumball. I just really enjoy the fact that the villain is an antagonist, but you can understand where he comes from. According to Hawkodile, they were both of equal importance. And I remember thinking before, and I still think now, that if the sensei gave it to them both and represented them both equally and reward them both for their hard work, it would be different. But he only gives it to one of them, despite both of them being equal apparently. So to me, the sensei is the true person to blame. And that's how you build an antagonist that I care about. I care about the fact that Hawkodile essentially won it kind of fair and kind of square, and they didn't need to spend any more than a minute to explain it. So Eagleator rages, and Hawkodile, being the only one who seems to be as tough as him, knocks him down. This has a large action hero vibe, which also reminds me of that one action episode from the Fairly Odd Parents, except not as spoofy. So because Hawkodile put on a blindfold, he requests that his friends fight for him to receive his shades back. Unikitty suggests that they should hug it out, because that's just the type of character she is. However, because they are ill-equipped for battle, they go through the same action forest that Hawkodile and Eagleator went through to become the tough bros that they are.
Now the only way to beat an action hero is to become an action hero. In Action Forest! It's gonna be tough, but it's the only way. Sure you're up for this?
They do not forget the comedy. Yes, in my reviews, I generally don't mention the jokes. And honestly, I think it goes without question. I don't want to ruin it, but the show is very comedic by design, and considering the show it is, and the platform it's on, that should go without question. At this point in time, it isn't as funny as OKKO, but that's only because personally, I find some of the comedic styles on OKKO to my taste was very relatable humor at times, whereas Unikitty appears to have a lot more slapstick and subversion, the latter being pretty much built into a show that uses baby metal in its theme song. They first fail because montage, and after Unikitty sees that this is serious and she'd do anything to help a friend, they all pick up their slack and essentially become an action hero stereotype. But that's not bad at all.
Hawkodile, doesn't have to be this way. Why don't you just give your old friend a hug?
There's a time for hugs, and there's a time for punches. And right now, it's time for...
Hugs.
No, punches.
Oh, right. I see where you were going with that now.
I love this moment. They reach the moment where they confront Eagleator, and they use music that would sound at home in your very cheesy vintage action movie. Although this episode is clearly taking influence from action movies, they aren't really that campy, unlike the sweaters, for instance, another episode that I reviewed from The Amazing World of Gumball. If you didn't understand or even recognize the reference, I think you can still enjoy what this episode is. And that's really, ideally, all I ask for. It's not much. Just a reason to care and a solid story on top of the reference that you want to explore. That's pretty much it. Not that hard to please.
Show 'em what you got!
Hacking in! I disrupt all the system!
Catchphrase.
This is supposed to be my day off! Mainframe is down! Enhance! We can do this the easy way or the hard way!
Catchphrase.
apologize.
I'm not sure why, but that monotone guy really interests me. Maybe it's because my voice doesn't have that much of a range and could be described as a bit dull, but anyway, they all go down because they get outbroed by the Eagleator. Like I said, they all learned the cliches of being an action hero, but never actually became, you know, an actual action hero, and thus they are tossed aside like yesterday's garbage. The big fight at the end happens and Unikitty still tries to push that hugs beat punches. Hawkodile tries this, and although it would lead you into thinking one thing, it actually turns out to be a swerve, to which if you know anything about Unikitty, you don't make her angry.
Sorry I lost my temper, even though I said it was time for hugs.
No, don't apologize, please. Do more of this. So it essentially ends on that there is times for punches and there's time for hugs, basically giving a very tried and true moral that works here, because they also mixed it with an action movie spoof undertone, and that was Action Forest. Did Unikitty start off well? Without a doubt, yes. Yes, it did. The action in this, while wacky and not serious, still sustains a very entertaining show. I can see lots of potential for exploring the lore or just having a very exciting or funny episodes, just exploring the life of Unikitty and her friends. Although Puppycorn and the lot get pushed aside in this episode, it proves that at least some characters can hold their own. I love the bouncy and cartoonish animation style, and although I alluded to earlier that this seems to bank on the trend of LOL random action wacky comedy that Mighty Magic Swords, OKKO, and the reboots all seem to cash in on, the show appears to have more substance, so I wouldn't complain too much. But this was the lack of variety that I was talking about. But with other shows coming out, I hope they prove me wrong, both in their variety and longevity. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Follow me at the ALPHAJ Show and go into my request video for any requests you have that isn't in the pinned comment. If you really like this video, I highly suggest watching my OKKO review for another new Cartoon Network show review, at the time at least. Make sure to subscribe and feel free to consider my Patreon as always. I hope your time is well spent, and Alpha out.